You're watching France 24 and the Business Interview. I'm Markus Karlsson. Think different. That advertising slogan helped Apple reconstruct its battered brand in the late 1990s. The company was close to collapse, but then came the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone and the iPad. The gadgets set Apple on a course to become the most valuable company ever. Its market capitalization today stands well above $600 billion. In this program, we're speaking to one of the men behind the Think Different slogan. Ken Siegel describes himself as a former Apple ad guy, and he's written the book Insanely Simple, The Obsession That Drives Apple's Success. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Now, you say your main argument in the book is that the key to Apple's success is simplicity. Talk us through what you mean by that.
Well, I think a lot of people look at Apple's incredible success and attribute it to the fact that they have these super cool products that are easy to use. And the premise of the book really is that you can't create products this simple unless your whole company is obsessed, shall we say, with simplicity. Steve Jobs had this sense of simplicity that he applied to every part of the business, from the way the company was organized, to the way they innovated, to the way they advertised. Really, every level of Apple was guided by this sense of simplicity.
What kind of role does marketing and advertising play in building Apple's success? I know that Steve Jobs, he was obsessed, as you were just saying there, with the marketing and with branding, as well as the engineering part of the business.
Well, Steve was absolutely a genius marketing person, and he loved marketing. And I think it was always in his head from the beginning, when they designed any product, really where it fit in people's lives and how he would communicate that. So I think, unlike a lot of companies, marketing played a role very early in the process with Steve. And I also think they've done this amazing job of creating this a company that is such a focus for everybody, that their marketing is important, but this buzz factor that precedes every product announcement, much as it is doing this week, is something that Apple sort of seeds, but they don't actively agitate like that. The whole world, all the bloggers, all the journalists are set up to do that for them.
Steve Jobs' constant drive for simplicity didn't mean, though, that he was a fairly difficult customer.
Yes, I think it's safe to say Steve was a difficult customer. He was like the tough father, I suppose, who wanted the best for his kids, but he was not going to put up with anyone who didn't fall in line. If you didn't perform quickly enough or at a high enough level of quality, you would absolutely hear about it.
And I remember when I was reading a book, you described two occasions on which you were shouted at by Steve Jobs. Was that a frightening experience?
It was. I wear those experiences like a badge of courage. One in particular is an interesting indicator of the way Steve was obsessed with detail, as we well know. There was a 12 or 16 page piece we were running to introduce the first iMac. And there was a photo in there that he sensed was not exactly the right color blue, because they had made a slight adjustment to their product before the product was released, but after we were sending this piece out to be printed. And he had a major attack over that one because this blue was not right. But I have to point out that to you or me, that shade of blue would not have been perceptible at all, but he wanted every single detail to be perfect.
Now, you were making the point in this interview, and you also made the point in the book, that much of Apple's success is due to Steve Jobs. Of course, he passed away last year. Is there a risk that Apple could be losing its way under the leadership of Tim Cook, the current CEO? What do you make of that?
Well, for starters, I think everyone has to stop and take a deep breath and realize that there was only one Steve Jobs, and he can never, ever be replaced. He was a man of incredible vision, and he was a charismatic, inspirational leader. So Apple can go on because Steve really instilled those values into the company, and certainly his executive team is well acquainted with those values. But I think the nature of the circumstance is that it has to be different because Steve isn't here anymore, and other people will never do exactly what Steve did. So I think it is a question of embracing his values and keeping those in mind when they make certain decisions.
But you've been very critical of Apple's latest ad campaign during the Olympics. What went wrong in your view, and does it mean that Tim Cook simply doesn't have the full view, so to speak, that Steve Jobs used to have?
Yes. Well, I think that last batch of ads were less than stellar, shall we say. But I don't think that a single campaign really indicates, horrible problem, the ship is not going down, that kind of thing. Because any company, no matter how good it is, will stumble in its marketing from time to time. And I must candidly admit that I was responsible for a few clunkers in my day. So I don't hold them responsible in that sense that they're totally losing touch.
Are you personally worried?
I'm personally not worried. I have to phrase this cautiously. Because of the last campaign, I was a little surprised by that. So I'm withholding worry until I see it happen twice in a row.
Now, of course, Apple used to be seen as the little guy, the underdog. Isn't there a risk that it's becoming part of the establishment now with, as I said before, market capitalization well above $600 billion?
Right. There certainly is that danger. In the good old days when it was just a Mac they were trying to sell and they had 3% of the market share, you could be a cult and you could do things probably riskier, in a riskier way. Now they're a mass market, and iPhones are big items, and iPads own like, 70 or 80% of the market. So they are forced to behave slightly differently. But I think if you're an advertising person, it's still Apple, and you want Apple's personality and its wit and its intelligence and its level of quality to remain. So that's their challenge.
But you say that the brand Apple is almost a cult and it's got an extraordinary following, but could they really keep this up? Seeing, as I said, the company's so big, it has so many products. Do you think that it will be able to keep it up in the long term?
I personally believe it will. As I said, I think it'll be different because Steve's not here anymore. But I do believe that the values have been well instilled into the company. You have to keep in mind that when Steve left in 1985 and things sort of fell apart, they really had only had about 2 products, meaningful products at the time, the Apple II and the Macintosh. In his last 10 years or so, Apple did so much innovating and revolutionizing that everyone at Apple is well aware that innovation is the order of the day.
Now, if we stay with Apple today, there's a lot of media attention on the legal battle between the company and its arch-rival Samsung. The two have been suing and counter-suing each other in courtrooms across the globe, accusing each other of patent infringement. Now, some say that that's proof that Apple is turning into a little bit of a bully. What do you say about that?
Well, I think I'd have to agree with Steve Jobs on this one, that when you spend all those years and have all those people working so hard to develop things that are original, it is a little painful, and it doesn't serve your business very well if you allow other companies to just copy those ideas and sell their products and say they're as good as Apple's. So I think it's kind of the nature of the beast. If you're a company that thrives on innovation, you have to protect your original thinking. For those who say that it stifles competition, I actually take the opposite view, that if people aren't allowed to copy Apple, they will be forced to innovate on their own, and I think the customer benefits from that.
But Steve Jobs himself, he said that he had copied ideas or at least taken inspiration from other products and then improved on them. Don't you think that's what Samsung is doing at the moment, for instance?
Well, that's a very good question, because Steve does have that famous quote, good artists copy, great artists steal, and I was surprised it didn't come up more often during the Samsung coverage. I think he was talking about like the Xerox thing, you know, with the whole mouse and the graphical interface, that they saw that and they took that idea and went with it and did things with it that Xerox had never imagined doing. So there's certainly a fine line there. And I think Apple succeeded in persuading this court, at least. We haven't seen what will happen on appeal or anything like that. But it's a tough thing when you're dealing with billions of dollars like that. It's hard to just say, go ahead and copy. You know, it's all good for the consumer. I think Apple will just suffer, and they need to protect their innovative ideas.
Now, you referred to this before, but there is a lot of focus on the iPhone 5, and it is widely believed that it will be unveiled next week, this new product. Do you think that Apple still has the wow factor when it comes to iPhones? What are you expecting?
I do. I think no matter what they do, there will be people who write these criticisms that it's not really an improvement, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the rumors are pretty good on this one, bigger screen, and I'm sure it'll be faster and better camera and all that kind of stuff. So I personally am holding out for one. It
sounds as if you have some good insider tips there that the screen, for instance, will indeed be bigger. That's what we can expect then.
Yeah, there are a lot of spy photos out there that show it a little taller, and the screen may go edge to edge, that kind of thing. It's widely expected to be a 4-inch screen. Which again is interesting because Steve had spoken on that topic, I believe, talking about optimal screen sizes, and certainly he did with the tablet, saying that that 10 inches was ideal, and he laughed at the idea of a 7-inch screen, and apparently now Apple is working on these smaller iPads. So again, things change. All right,
Ken Siegel, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks very much indeed for taking the time. That was Ken Siegel there joining us from New York. And with that, we're going to wrap up this program. Thanks for watching.